Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our TEPSA Presents. I'm your host, Todd Neslony, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership here at the Texas Elementary Principals and Supervisors Association. We are proud to bring you these TEPSA Presents episodes twice a month over timely topics that we know our members want to hear about. And in talking to different members over the last couple of weeks, one thing that keeps coming up again and again is discipline. So today I've brought together 5 administrators, some in Texas and a few from outside the state, to share some ideas on ways that they're handling discipline and what they're seeing. But before we begin with that, I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves, tell you who they are, where they work, and if their school is currently in person, hybrid, or virtual. Vanikin, we'll start with you.
Hi, my name is Vanikin Leggett, and I am an elementary principal in Navasota ISD. And right now we are all in person with some exceptions of virtual based on COVID cases and close contact and that kind of thing.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Vanikin. Next up will be Valerie.
Hi, I am so excited to be here, first of all, so thank you so much for this opportunity. But my name is Valerie Nesmith Arechiga, and I am an assistant principal at Cock Wilson Elementary in Corpus Christi, Texas, in CCISD.
And how are y'all learning right now?
And we are hybrid right now.
Hybrid, awesome. Next up is Allyson.
Hi, I'm Allyson Apsey, and I am an elementary principal in Zeeland, Michigan. And we are remote right now. We started the school year in person, full in person, and we were in person for the first 9 weeks. And this is our 3rd week in remote. So it's my 17th year as a principal, and it feels like my first year.
I can imagine. Next up, we've got Josh.
Hey everyone, my name is Joshua Samper. I'm an assistant principal at a middle school in Frisco ISD in Texas, and we are actually half and half. So we are half in person and half remote. So we've got a mixed bag this year. We definitely didn't want to do hybrid. So it's been an interesting year for sure.
And last but not least is my friend Principal L.
Hello everybody, this is Principal L. I'm a K-8 principal in Wilmington, Delaware. I actually feel like Texas is my second home. I've been there so much. So love all you Texas folks. We are full remote, and I am in my 21st year as a principal, 33 years as an educator. And this year for sure is not only like a first year, but it's like the first year every year for like 10 years. And that year is on fire every year. So it's a great learning experience, and I'm honored to be here with you wonderful folks.
So I chose 5 people who had a variety of experience, in person, hybrid, virtual, who are all in this together. And like you all said, it doesn't matter how many years of experience you are bringing right now, it's everybody's first year.
Yeah.
But typically during a normal school year, when you get into this time of the year around the holidays, you see discipline increase a little bit. You see kids a little bit more on edge, either because they're ready for that break and ready to get away, or they don't want to go away and they don't want to be at home. But the pandemic has thrown a whole nother wrench into things where some of us are seeing discipline we've never seen before. And some of us are really having to pull every tool out of the tool chest to be able to reach our students. And honestly, some of our staff too, to keep them engaged and not losing it on the kids too, and to continue to be patient, as well as us as administrators, making sure you all maintain your sanity. And so I'd love to start with just having that conversation of, what are you seeing this year when it comes to discipline? Are you seeing things be different? Is it more? Is it less? Is it just hard to compare? And we'll start with you, Allyson.
I have to say, like, as you're talking, Todd, I am just so grateful for the work that we've put in over the past few years with preventative measures, making school as need satisfying as possible, learning and growing every day, and instituting some restorative practices. I'm no Joshua Stamper, but we have instituted some restorative practices that have been extremely helpful. And it's really just a team approach. We have a parapro on staff who is just a connector She's called the Student Success Coordinator. And that helps in so many ways. It helps obviously with our students who need the additional support, so we can plug that in rather than have them scream for the additional support. But also teachers knowing that if I have a student who needs something that I don't feel like I can provide them right now, that they have people like me, of course, as a principal, but other people to lean on has been incredibly important this year.
You know, I love that you have a person on staff who is known as the connector and is somebody you can call on in those difficult situations. Because I know especially administrators who come from really small schools or really small districts, they don't always have those people. And those people are instrumental in connecting with those kids. But like you said, also being a lifeline for the teachers to know that they're available as well. So I love that idea of having that connector ready to go on staff. Well, you know, Valerie, you are an assistant principal, and typically the assistant principal deals with a lot of the discipline on campus. And so what are you seeing this year? Are you finding it difficult or more than normal or different, or how are you seeing things?
Well, that's right. I mean, what do they say? I think they say discipline in textbooks or something like that for APs. But I've been very fortunate enough to work with some amazing principals that have allowed me to kind of do what I need to do and then also learn in other areas besides those two things. So that's been great. There's actually at the campus that I'm at, there are 2 assistant principals and 1 principal. So there's 3 of us. We also have an instructional teacher advisor who has been an adopted administrator. And so she also helps us out in that area too. Our district did Capturing Kids' Hearts this year, and we all were trained. I mean, from the bus drivers to custodians to teachers and paras, everybody that was going to be interacting with those students this year was trained in Capturing Kids' Hearts, which I think really set the tone for going into this year. One of the things that I feel is really helping, because I want to say we've had 1 referral this year, and what I attribute to that is the systems that we've put in place because of Capturing Kids' Hearts. Our teachers are doing things like checking in, having students check in, what range from 1 to 10, how do you feel today? Or let's do some celebrations in the beginning. Let's shout out celebrations and talk about what you guys, shout out to other people who have maybe helped you. Another thing that I'm really loving this year is that we have 2 points of entry. So the neighborhood kids are coming in through the front of the school, which somebody is greeting them as they walk in. And then we have about 12 people that are outside opening car doors, including myself, the principal, and the other assistant principal, and we are squirting. I have the job of germ juice, which is a sanitizer, and so I'm squirting those on the kids, telling them good morning, and we're all starting it off with a smile. And then we're also, what we have noticed too, is that we're capturing those kids who haven't maybe woken up on the right side of the bed, and we're pulling them aside and having those conversations right away, so that way we can address the issue before they go to the classroom. And we've found that a lot of our students are coming in happier. They can't wait to greet us in the morning. They call us the morning crew. We also do it in the afternoon. And so we're welcoming them with smiles and then sending them off the same way. And so I really feel like that has been a huge benefit to our campus in lowering our discipline issues, along with the Capturing Kids' Hearts training that we're receiving and implementing at our campus.
Well, Valerie, you said 2 fantastic things that stuck out to me. One was when y'all chose to do Capturing Kids' Heart, you trained everybody. And I think that that's what's hugely important. You can't just focus on the teachers. Everybody needs to be on the same page, because everybody plays a role in how that kid's day is going to go. But I love that y'all focus so much on the greeting in the morning, because a lot of the kids at the school that I worked at, You know, they're coming in a bad mood because something that happened at home or in the car or on the bus. And so you have the opportunity right there to turn that day around and let them know, forget it. I love you. I'm so glad you're here. And I love that y'all set that tone from the start, even with your germ juice that you've got to have now. So I love that y'all are doing that. So thanks for sharing that, Valerie. Well, Elle, you have been at the same school for a while now. And so that obviously allows you the opportunity to really set some things in place and some standards where the kids and the staff kind of know what's expected. As far as handling discipline on your campus, how has that been going this year? I mean, especially with you being virtual.
Right. So yeah, 10 years at the school. So my much love to assistant principals. As I tell everyone, our APs are our backup. So when the teachers act up, they got to see the backup. But hats off, Valerie, to your administrative team for giving you the opportunity to grow as an instructional leader, as a person who's building relationships and connecting with teachers and parents, and not just as a disciplinarian. Although we know those roles are important because all behavior is communication. So I started my career as a special education and math teacher, and then elevated into an in-school suspension teacher. And I started teaching high-level mathematics and chess in the in-school suspension room. So I had parents, when kids would get released from ISS, parents would come and say, can my kids stay in ISS? Because my kid has never been in school this long and I haven't received phone calls at home. And several of those students who were ISS all-stars, one was like homecoming queen in ISS, like they have master's degrees. Like these are kids who turn their lives around through communicating and connecting with folks who work with students and believing in those who had what we thought were behavior issues, but they really were just reaching out. You know, the children who need the most love ask for it in the most unloving ways. And we're finding that for sure, you know, in this pandemic, that what we found is that the gap that was there, not just in academics, but in family support and in equity, in general, we're beginning to sort of see what many of these students were lacking. And oftentimes it was just the love and support from an adult. And oftentimes when they were able to get in trouble, most times they wanted that attention. Mm-hmm. So I'm finding that, remotely, we're seeing fewer discipline problems, but the issue is we're seeing fewer students.
Right.
So so that's the trade-off, is that the engagement, is not there. Many of my teachers, they're doing an amazing job. They're just so resilient with reaching out to parents, reaching out to students, finding that person who's the connector. I'm going to borrow that term and use that. But, we have one of our APs who's sort of like our connector. He's like our Ray Donovan on the staff. He goes out and finds kids that won't get on and parents that won't answer calls. He goes out and, we go out and make home visits, make calls. We find folks on social media. We do whatever we can just to get the lines of communication open to find out what it is that we need. So it is a challenge. I mean, I'm seeing all the info in the news about how student test scores are decreasing, reading scores. We knew that was going to happen when the students were not in school with us. That's why we want them in school with us. We want you to invest in us so we can provide what the students need. But I think also we need to tell the story about there's so many children who teachers are saying who, when they were in school, didn't participate much, but they are so involved, at home. They really are fine because they're connecting, with some of those adults. So it's all about being more empathetic, right? It's all about being more patient. So we've got to find a different way of engaging students, understanding those students who, won't turn the camera on when you want the camera on, won't turn the mic on. But just knowing that this is new for them. We talk about how this is our first year. This is the first year for them, in going through this. So it requires all of us to sort of just have a little more love, offer a little more support, and just remember that those students are really talking to us and trying to communicate with us when they misbehave or when they're missing from behavior, as well. So it's just about connecting, finding that connector and connecting with those families, because as you know, those relationships will help you overcome many of those issues. And we're a leader in me school, so we believe in building the capacity in our students to find that from K through 8. So those kindergarten students can tell you, all 7 habits, of effective leaders, but they also know what that looks like when I apply that as well.
Well, there's something you said there that I remember learning at the beginning of my career was that misbehavior is a form of communication. And I think that's so important to remember is that when those kids are lashing out and choosing are making choices that we don't agree with, it's their way, it's their only way they know how to communicate with the emotions that they don't understand how to deal with. So I love that you said that. Well, Vanikin, you were an amazing assistant principal, and then at the same school, you got to move into that principal role now. And what a first 2 years of being a principal and getting to have half a year in the pandemic and now a full year with the pandemic. And so talk to me a little bit about what it's been like with discipline at your campus or what you're seeing and learning.
I know since I've been the AP here, over the years, discipline has gone a little less and less. And right now, and even these past 3 years, it's little to none here. We have also been incorporating some of those capturing kids' hearts things on our campus, greeting at the door, morning meetings, that kind of thing. And I feel like the biggest thing is I am blessed that I am from Navasota. And so I was able to build relationships with my town, my hometown. And so I think that it's been really good because I think relationship building is the biggest thing. Even some of our toughest kids that we've had over the last 5 years, they just want to be able to talk to somebody and someone to know that you understand what they're going through. And even right now, as we're in a pandemic, I try to remind myself and the teachers that the kids are going through some things and this is their safe place. And so oftentimes when they're acting out or they may feel a certain type of way, they just want somebody to talk to them or just listen to say that they understand what they're going through. And it's okay. It's okay to be tired. They may need a 5-minute nap just to be able to get through the day. And so I agree with what everyone else has said about, I think the biggest thing is we have to build relationships with students and know what they're going through. And I think I know every single kid in my schools by name. It's about 300 kids. And so I know them by name. I know their families. I call them by their first name. If I don't know it, I make sure that I ask them and say, okay, tell me one more time because I forgot, and so they know that I care because, I know them and I want to know what's going on in their lives.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, Vanikin. Well, Joshua, you are, like Valerie, an assistant principal, but you get the joy of working at a middle school, which on top of normal behavior, you throw in a pandemic, you throw in a political crazy storm of a year, you throw in social justice events. I mean, that all adds a lot to those middle school kids who are already dealing with emotions they don't know how to handle. So what has your experience been like this school year, and what are you seeing and how are you handling it?
Well, I feel like I've got two different worlds because I've got the virtual world and students and I've got the face-to-face. And so with the face-to-face, those practices are pretty similar to what we were doing last year. The only difference is, of course, we're trying to make sure that we're doing it in a safe measure. So for instance, if we're doing a restorative circle, we need to be 6 feet away. 6 feet away, we need to have our masks on and make sure that we're socially distant through that. So we're still trying those practices. We have been doing push-ins. So that's where, like, if a student is acting out in a classroom, an administrator can come to the classroom, take over the classroom. The teacher then is able to come out with the student. They are able to kind of have a little walk, again, socially distant, or maybe go outside. That way they can keep that connection, keep that relationship. And that way, when they come back into that environment, they're able to already rectify what has occurred in the classroom. And so we've seen a lot of positives from that too. Instead of just sending them to ISS, that teacher is able to resolve it quickly and get the student back on track. So, we're still trying to utilize those restorative practices as much as possible for the students that are on our campus. We're doing the SEL piece too, doing daily check-ins in the morning. Those have been really successful because if someone, for instance, Todd, you said it, is having an issue at home, let's say they had a big blow up with a parent and they're coming in and they're not ready to learn. Well, we can establish that by getting a quick assessment of understanding, okay, they're not in the right mind frame to learn. So what is it that they need? What are the resources? And so maybe it is just coming down and speaking to a counselor, and then when they're ready, going back to class and trying to identify that as soon as possible. As far as the emotional piece too, like a lot of times we just assume that middle school kids, because a lot of them look like adults, especially our 8th graders. We just assume that they know how to regulate themselves. And a lot of them don't have those skills. They can't self-regulate, so they need to co-regulate. They need to have an adult with them to do so. And that takes time, and that takes an effort for them to learn those skills and to learn that with an adult. And sometimes we just assume like they have that, get over it, move on and learn. And that's not really what can happen in the real world and in middle school, especially. As far as our virtual kids, we're seeing a lot more academic dishonesty, trying to find things online, texting each other, finding out all kinds of ways of not doing the work. And so really trying to teach our teachers in the sense that like that's a behavior, and we need to work through that. We need to teach them the correct behavior, but we don't need to penalize them and punish them through the grade. We need to make sure that we're doing a true assessment of their knowledge. And so it is taking a little bit more work, but we're truly getting like what the student knows versus just trying to punish with a bad grade for a student with dishonesty. The other piece too is like social media is a big thing. So, people on Snapchat and doing different things that they're not supposed to during the school day. And that piece has been interesting where it's really needs to be a partnership between the school and the parent. The parent is the principal of their home. So they need to, I can't go to their house and put them in ISS. I mean, that's not possible. So it's really about a partnership and making sure that the parent is working with the school as far as, what that is and them helping with the teaching piece. So, we may get on Zoom with the kid to still have that conversation, but as far as the consequences go, the parents we have to have that partnership. Otherwise it won't be successful for them to learn the appropriate behaviors.
You said something really there that stuck with me, and that is, kids need adults there to help them regulate their emotions. And I fear so much for our kids who haven't been around adults who can help them, because sometimes the families don't possess the skills necessary to help regulate emotions. I mean, we as educators have to be trained in how to de-escalate and how to do all these things. And so it's not I remember hearing one time where I think it was Rita Pearson who said that they're sending you their best. Like they aren't trying to ruin their child to send you this terrible kid. No, they're sending you the best that they have. And so you have to accept it knowing that is their best right now. It doesn't mean we can't make them better, but that is their best right now. And so I'd love to know real quick, you all have been connecting with kids, but you've also been connecting with families. And sometimes some severe discipline really takes you bringing the family in. And so when you reflect on different experiences that you've had with dealing with discipline, what is one that comes to mind that you're like, that was really successful, and that you can share with others who are listening that they may have a takeaway today going, oh yeah, okay, that's something I could take and use. So we'll start with you, Valerie. What is something that comes to your mind that you're like, that when we really did this, that really helped? I know you mentioned the greeting in the morning and stuff like that, but thinking about a particular kid or family or situation.
Yeah. If I think that, I've been fortunate to have several of those situations. And I've walked away from each one having learned something new and just how to be a better leader, a better communicator. And I think one in particular is when the parent is sometimes doesn't believe that her child did something, comes in very upset, and you have to, sit down, listen, talk, build that relationship with that parent. And I think my favorite thing is being able to listen and then develop that mutual respect, and also connect on certain levels as far as like, I'm a mom too, and I completely understand. And when these kids are here at this campus, I want you to know that I'm taking care of them in the exact same way I want my children to be taken care of at their campus. And so setting that foundation, building that relationship, and having a parent walk in irate and then only wanting to come back and speak to you because now you're their best friend, it's so rewarding. Mm-hmm. And so I think in every situation, the one thing that sticks out to me the most is listening and not doing all the talking and truly listening and not trying to think of what I'm going to say next, and understanding that, like you said, this is their very best, and always believing that the students have come in to the situation trying to be the best that they could be for the day. And nobody wakes up saying, I want to go in there and I want to get in trouble today. And so always, looking at how can we fix this situation, because one of the things that I always talk to the teachers about is, we're not going to get new kids. These are the kids that we have. And so this is what we have to work with, and we are going to work with them, and every day is going to be a new day. So I think communication, setting that foundation and building those relationships is huge.
You said something there that I remember learning early in my principal career, and it took me a while to learn it because I'm a talker, but it was that when parents come in angry, just let them talk. Just let them spew it all out and just sit there and take it all. Because what I learned the hard way is a lot of them, that's all they need. They just need to throw it all out of you, and then they feel better. And then they'll sit and they're like, oh, okay, I'm so sorry I did that at the beginning of the meeting. And you're like, hey, we're friends now. I don't really care. Like, you could do that. That's okay. But I love that you shared that, Valerie. Well, Elle, what about you? What is something you've done that's really worked well? I know your school's big on the chess, and I know that builds a lot of skills and things like that. But when you think about a particular instance, what stands out to you that really worked well?
And it does. And one of the things the chess does is when, Joshua talked about the self-regulation, that's why we teach kids chess real young, because most students don't develop those skills. And I have a K-8 school. I spent 10 years in the middle school where I didn't think I'd ever teach again every day when I left that school. They're 8 one day, 18 the next day. But it's such a wonderful age for kids. And what Rita Pearson also said was that parents don't keep their good kids home. Like, it's like they send us their best. But what I try to do is, as a parent myself, is I try to get parents to understand that I'm a parent, but we both, and I try to tell some of my young administrators, because they aren't all parents. We also we say to parents that we all were kids at one time, because I have some parents who will come in and tell you, I believe everything my child says. Nobody in this school is going to convince me that my child's a liar. Now, my child has lied at home to me, but in school, that child's not lying. And then I just try to get the parent to understand, when you were a kid, how often did you go home and tell your mom the truth when you were in trouble, right? So just think about, and I said, most times the kids don't tell you the truth because they fear the consequence. Mm-hmm. They fear, the punishment, whatever it may be. And children can choose the behavior, but they can't choose the consequence. So I said, let your child know that you're going to forgive them, that you love them, that you honor them telling you the truth, because it's what our parents told us. And most times they could get the truth from us. Now, we paid for it, but they got the truth from us. And most times the kid would just turn around and say, Mom, school's not lying. I did, because what I would say to a parent, you really think I have time to call you, lie to you about your child, have you come in this meeting, soak up all my time simply because I want to lie? And most times, like you said, Todd and Val, listening is so important. I'm learning, and I just did a presentation, for Camp Leader on principal and parent power, the power of the relationship between a principal and parent. You don't often hear that. You hear teacher and parent, you hear teacher and principal relationship, but you don't hear much about the relationship between the administrator and the parent. And that's real, and it's important. And when parents know that you're disciplining their children because you love them, discipline is a form of love. When they know that, they know you care about them, and they just want it done with dignity, dignity and respect. So what has worked for us is when we get kids to understand that in the end, your parent will value and love you when you're honest with them. And I see some parents hug their kids after some of these meetings, and you can tell they don't hug often. Like the expression of love is rare for them. And I think that's sort of the proudest moment for me, because you see kids start crying when a parent says, I love you, I hug you. You know that you've helped the family. You've avoided a suspension. You've sort of united and brought some love in between the family that may have been struggling, simply because you got a child to be open and honest. But a parent to say to a child, it's not about the consequence. It's not about the discipline. It's about you being honest and being real. But the important key in all of that is listening. It's why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Well, and you said something really powerful there that is such a great reminder for us to hear, is that, everything shouldn't come down to the consequence. A lot of it needs to come down to the conversation, because like you said, when you can tell that kid breaks down when they're honest, and that parent just gives them a hug, or that guardian just comes in and tells them, I appreciate your honesty, like there was growth in that moment. And in the reality, as leaders, that's what we're all looking for, is for these kids to grow and understand their emotions and how to use them. So thank you for sharing that.
And I don't know if Todd, now real quick, I don't know if you ever seen this as a principal, but sometimes the parent will come in and will bring like 2 other relatives as backup, right? So
Yep.
like, I'm not winning this one today. And then the meeting ends up going well, and you're like, thank God. But that's one of the scariest moments as the administrator.
I love it. Well, Allyson, one thing that I really admire about your work is you are such a relational person. You're so positive in the way you try to do things. And so I'd love to know, when you think about your experiences dealing with these discipline issues, or kids who don't regulate well their emotions and lash out, what's an instance that you can think of and how you handled it and that's really stuck with you?
So as Principal L was talking about the fear of the consequences, I thought back to restorative practices, and the whole, like when there's an issue, what we're looking for with restorative practices is repairing the damage that was done. And if students know that our goal is to help them make it better and help them repair whatever happened, whether it was relationship damage or like physical damage, whatever the case is, then they're much more apt to be honest with us. And we have a process that we work through. We call it restorative recess, and we don't love it being during recess time, but we can't figure out another time to fit it in during the school day. But students go through a process. If there's a problem, they go to restorative recess, which is actually just outside with a clipboard with their class right now because of the pandemic. But they work through, they've had processing time because it wasn't immediately after the issue. And they work through, what happened? What were you thinking at the time? How were you feeling at the time? Who did your behavior impact? And then what are your ideas to repair? And you really have to teach them, because at first their idea for repairing is to never do it again. Well, that'd be great, but let's think about what happened and who is impacted and how you can help repair the damage that was done. And I think in communicating with parents, I don't like having students call home about a discipline issue, because that is just full of shame, and that's not what we're looking to do. But when I can present a student's own words to a parent, and that is through that restorative recess document, that is pretty powerful. And the other thing that has been really helpful is recognizing that parents need processing time too. So when I present an issue with their parent that like shocks them, I don't know, kindergartner peed outside on the playground or something like that, and they're like, oh, my child would never do something like that. Like if you can give them some processing time and let them wrap their minds around, like, that's not actually the end of the world. My child did it when he was in preschool. And then we can work together. But I think having the child's own words, all the work that we do with positive and telling our own story and being active on social media, like all of those things tell the big picture story and allow families to trust in the work that we're doing with their children, so that when we hit up to an issue, we're able to work together much better.
Well, something that you said there that really resonated with me was not having that in-depth conversation with the kid right away, giving them the time to process what happened. Because sometimes in our crazy day of an administrator, we try to pull the kid right away, deal with it right then, and they're not ready to deal with whatever they did right then. They got to comprehend what happened. So I love that you did it, but I love that you said processing time sometimes for the parents too. So that was brilliant, Allyson. Thank you. Well, Josh, dealing with middle school again, you, I'm sure, have the most exciting stories. Hopefully there's no peeing on the playground and with your kids, but you never know. So what kind of stands out to you as something that's worked really well with your age group?
Well, I think when parents are coming in, it's kind of the mindset of what their own experience was. And for most of them, probably the principal's office was not a great place to be in. And so, you have to understand that, you have to be in their shoes and their perspective of what that looks like. So when they're coming in with high emotions, most likely it's because of the traditional practices that they went through themselves. And so it's really kind of teaching the parents themselves about restorative practices and what that looks like, because I think in their mindset, it's the school is out to punish my child instead of it being more of a learning experience. And so sometimes, we have to do what I teach with the teachers as far as being a window, not a mirror, right? So if they're coming in with strong emotions, I'm not replicating that back to them. I'm letting them share their emotions and trying to de-escalate the situation as quickly as possible. But, I think everyone's said it so far, is making sure that you're listening, but then also allowing them to be a part of that process as far as the teaching and the restorative practices about correcting the harm. I think once they understand that we're not out there to get them, but that we're a part of the team, we're a part of, it takes a village, right, to help every student. Once they understand that concept of we're looking outside of the box, I'm not just trying to send them home. I'm not trying to get them out of the building. I'm here to really look at the behavior and to make sure that they're learning from this experience and growing from it. We're not defining them by their behavior. We're trying to get past it and to repair the harm. And so once we start teaching the parents about the practices that we're doing, a lot of them have no clue that's actually occurring in the school. And so once they understand that piece, the conversation goes much better, because it's totally flipping their mindset. They're very defensive at first, and by the end of the conversation, they're listening and trying to be a part of the solution.
I think you said something great there about reminding them that we're on the same team. And like you said, some of their vitriol that may come at you is just because of their own personal experience. And that's important to remember too, because I can think of some principles that are nothing like principles I see today. That was when I was a kid. I was like, I would have never imagined the stuff any of us six were doing, my principals doing. Like, they never left the office. They just spanked kids. Like, that's all that happened. And so, Vanikin, growing up in the neighborhood now where you get to work, I love that you bring that special experience, because you do have some previously built connections. You can go down to the grocery store, to the barber shop, or to the park and see kids that are at your school and know that you grew up with their parents or things like that. And so when you think of some things that have worked well with you, what comes to mind?
I think the biggest thing for me is building the relationships with the families. Even though I grew up here, a lot of the families, I was a loner. So in school, kind of loner, I stayed to myself. So I'm building relationships with people I may have went to school with, but I didn't really talk to them. And so it's been helpful, because I feel like, just like everyone else said, once the parents are on your side, that's really all you need. Because if they know that you care about their kid, and I know for me, a lot of times, especially as an AP, I wasn't afraid to say, I didn't get in contact with mom today, but I'll be at your house this afternoon. Now, I work late nights. That's just kind of my thing. And so in the afternoon, maybe like 6:30, and they're thinking that it's over. And I'm like, come in, knocking on the door, and it's dark. But I feel like they need to know that I care enough about you to make sure that I talk to someone about what happened and how we can make it better. And I think that that's been the biggest thing for me. I want parents and students to be able to feel comfortable enough to speak to me about whatever. I will talk to a parent at any time. Even after we're getting off of this, I'm going to be calling a parent that I couldn't reach today, because I want to make sure that I don't forget to reach her. And so I think it's just building relationships, and like everyone else said, letting them know that you care about their kid, you want what's best for them. Not all the time. I know growing up, was it always the best for me? So I've been where you are, and I feel like I have came to a place where I feel like I'm making a difference, because I want to make a difference in my community. And you can do that too, letting the kids and the parents know, like, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It's not always going to be perfect, but you can turn it around, you can make it better, and you can make a difference.
Well, I want to say you five are doing incredible work, and I'm so thankful that you were able to join me and TEPSA for today's conversation on handling discipline. For those of you who are listening or watching, we here at TEPSA want to remind you through this conversation today that you are not alone, that everybody is dealing with all kinds of craziness, whether you are in person, hybrid, or virtual, connecting with families, building those those relationships, helping kids regulate their emotions. That's part of the joy of the work we do, because when you can reach that previously unreachable child or family, it is the best feeling in the world. And for me personally, it was even more rewarding than the academic achievements, because I knew that this was going to play into every area of their life moving forward. Relationships, friendships, jobs. When you can see that child begin to change their behavior because of the work you were doing to build those relationships, it makes all the difference. And so for everybody listening or watching, if you need any more resources or help, please reach out to TEPSA at any time, or connect with these 5 amazing administrators from across the state of Texas and the United States. And a couple of them even have some books out, so check those out as well. Join us again in 2 weeks for another TEPSA Presents from everybody from here at TEPSA and from across the state and the U.S. Have a great